get started for this lecture. What we have for in the agenda for today is the review for the exam. So I'm going to spend some time discussing what's going to be covered as part of the exam, the format of the exam. So the exam is going to be on Monday, 22nd, October 22nd, which is a Monday, next Monday. And it will have two parts. In the first part, you should expect up to 35 true or false questions. The review slides are posted, so you have access to them. They're available on tracks. So 30 to 35 true or false questions. And then on the second part, I had 2 to 3 topical problems. That could be 3 to 4, I don't know, up to 4, I would say, questions. In this exam, there's no mathematical problems. In the second exam, you will see more math. But in this first exam is more theory and concepts that are relevant for the systems engineering discipline. So things like listing the type of requirements, the 6 different type of requirements, and knowing the difference between them and how do they relate to a buildable system design, functional system design, and implementable system design. That's the type of question that you should expect. We also talk about the system life cycle. So remember to learn and to review those 3 stages and the phases within each one of them. So those are the type of questions that you should expect in this exam. So in terms of the material that is part of this first midterm, so we have a lot of lectures that we cover throughout the semester, through the first part of the semester. And we started with lecture 1, that was the introduction to systems engineering. And we cover topics on what is systems engineering, some of the definitions, the origins, examples of system requiring systems engineering, and we develop a lab along those lines. What is the systems engineer viewpoint? What is systems engineering in terms of a profession? The power of systems engineering, perspectives of systems engineering, and then we talk about system domains, systems engineering fields, system engineering approaches, and finally systems engineering activities and products. So those are the first 3 parts of lecture 1. So if I were you, in order to prepare with this, I would go through the lecture slide, make sure that I highlight those concepts that are relevant, like definitions, what is systems engineering, what are the system domains, what are some of the engineering approaches, like in terms of the diagrams that we discussed, and what is the difference between them, and so on. Then in lecture 2, we transition to learn about the concept of system thinking and what that entails. So what is system thinking? What are some of the basic system models? What are the fundamental system constructs? So those are important. I will put a star next to that. What are the fundamental system constructs? We talk about those. Fundamental system principles and classification of systems. Lecture 3, we talk about the structure of complex systems. And here's where we started the process of developing a system. So the system development process, system engineers, technical knowledge, what is if we look back at the hierarchy of a complex system, we talk about the parts, subcomponents, components, um, subsystems, systems, and systems of systems. That hierarchy, we discuss what is the level of knowledge that the systems engineer must have within that hierarchy. Um, we also talk about what is a system of systems, what are the system building blocks, the system environment, and why it's important to consider the system environment when you're designing a new system, and how that relates to interfaces and interactions. Remember the importance of testing, why it's important to develop tests, um, to consider the uncertainty and the risk that your system might face when it's performing in the environment that it's designed for. Then we transition to lecture 4. And in lecture 4, we have 6 pieces of lectures. Here we look at engineering and the design of large-scale systems. And we start with part 1 and 2, and we talk about the system development process, going through the system life cycle, those 3 stages with phases within them. System life cycle, the evolutionary characteristics of the development process, the systems engineering method, system engineering through the system life cycle, how the systems engineering life cycle and the system engineering method overlaps. The evolutionary characteristics of the development process. Here we talk about system materialization and the systems engineering method at the end. After the system development process, we switch gears in terms of going a little bit further in terms of how to describe the requirements for your system. And here's where we talk about the theory of system designs, what is system design versus system analysis, and how to write your requirements. What are the different type of requirements that you need to state for your system? So system design requirements, and how does that relate to functional system design, buildable system design, and an implementable system design. And the last part of that lecture discusses the system test requirements. Then in part 4, we spend a lecture talking about how to write your system requirements. This lecture is not only relevant for your project, but also it's not only relevant for your exam, but also very relevant for your project. So one of the things that I saw is in terms of the proposal, some of the students have a very difficult time writing a requirement. So in this lecture, we spend time discussing how you write the requirements, what needs to be listed in the requirements, how requirement must be written in terms of length, what type of information, what words you should use, and what they mean when you use those words. They have a meaning in terms of if it is something that you have to check at the end of the design, or if it's something that you don't necessarily have to check for the completion of your project. So writing system requirements is very important, not only for the exam, but also for the project. So in the next phase of the project, most of the report, well, it's not a report, the PowerPoint presentation that you are going to develop is going to be focusing on this part. So I want you to develop the requirements for your system, and they need to be written in this way, the way that we discussed in this lecture. And then in part 5, we talk about the systems engineering documents. And again, this is also relevant for your project. So these are the documents that you are going to generate for the final report of your project. So you need to understand what they are, what they are needed for, and what needs to be written, and what needs to be part of each one of those documents. And then part 6, this is what we did on Monday, or in the previous lecture. We spent time going through an example of how to develop a system. We started by discussing the problem, listing the requirements, then how can we transition from functions to requirements and from requirements to technology, how to test and validate your system, and so on. So that exercise took place in the previous lecture. I'm going to upload the solution for that exercise today, so you have access to it, and you can check the solution. So that's in terms of the material. That's all we have. Again, it's a midterm, so this is pretty heavy in terms of lecture material. But again, if you go through the lecture slides, you highlight those concepts that we have been discussing in class and been highlighting them through the lectures, you should be able to do very well. So in terms of the preparation, you can read chapters 1 through 3 from your textbook. That textbook is available online through the library. So you can download those chapters and you can read them at home. But most importantly, you have to go through the lecture slides and the homework. And we'll make sure that everything is listed in terms of having the lecture slides with the material, all the material. And also the homework solutions are also posted for your review. So the exam is closed book and notes. You will not have any material with you, only your pencil or your pen. In this case, you don't necessarily have to show formulas, but when you write the answers for the questions that I'm going to present you in the exam, make sure that you write a detailed answer, so you can get, if you don't get the right answer, you can get partial credit. And that's it. That's in terms of the review. So, is there any questions